Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Biz Bites for Thought Leaders. I have two guests with me, one I've known for a little while and one I've only just got to know. So firstly, let me welcome both Talila and Charles to the program. Welcome.
Lovely. Thank you for having us, Anthony. Really appreciate it.
Likewise. Thanks, Anthony. Great to be here.
And look, we're going to kick things off by doing what we always do and allowing you to introduce yourselves. So Charles, why don't you kick us off?
Thanks. So my name is Charles Clark. I'm one of the co-founders of BOMA. That's a marketing platform built specifically for accounting firms to help them grow their business and communicate with clients. Before BOMA, which was founded 10 years ago, I was working for various technology firms in the US and the UK as a consultant. And before that, I spent many years in advertising agencies, both in New Zealand and the UK. So that's a very short amount of time to sort of cover the last 25 odd years.
Yeah, to try and pack it into a couple of sentences, you've done quite well. Talila, I know we've known each other for a while, but why don't you introduce yourself to the audience? And I should preface it by saying to everyone, Talila and I are also on another podcast together called The Connected Accountant. We may talk a little bit more about that later on, but Talila, introduce yourself.
Yes. So, Anthony, as you know, and just to let everyone know, I'm Talila Kroy. I run Emple, co-founder of Empl, which we build sales engines for businesses, basically for professional services companies. We help them with client acquisition, which is in a really seamless way. And in doing that, we discovered how important partnerships were for our clients. And so we built Partner Suitcase and a piece of software called Empl.
I love that. Well, it's because there's so much to unpack with all of this. And I think there's lots of different directions that we can go. But I think the most important thing, particularly in the context of this show, is talking about this kind of idea of positioning people as thought leaders. And I think both from a partnership point of view and from a content point of view, and if I can start with you, Charles, I think, what you've tried to achieve with your platform is enabling accountants to position themselves differently from how they've traditionally been. It's no longer just sufficient to just say they're just an accountant and I just have someone to do my taxes.
Yeah, and I think there's been a real shift, definitely since we first started 10 years ago, when we were originally going out and doing our research as we sort of got BOMA underway. And most accountants we spoke to would say that they just relied on word of mouth and the tax office to drive their clients to them. And really, things have changed hugely in the last 10 years. Not least because a whole generation of people have grown up being digital natives and social media natives. And so they expect to be communicated with by the businesses and the companies in their life more than just once a year, maybe at tax time. They really want that ongoing relationship. And so that's really forcing accountants to rethink about how they then communicate and build that relationship with their clients, because if they rely on maybe just 1 or 2 emails a year around tax time, they're going to find out that actually those clients are looking for more value. And if they're not providing it, obviously someone else might be. So we really see marketing as a way to tell the story of the business the businesses that you work with, the services that you offer, and equally try and educate those clients on how they can, do more, do better in their business as well. So rather than just being seen as a compliance shop, they really start to develop the reputation as an advisor who is there not just at tax time, but really there throughout the year, and can really give them value on a whole range of topics and options that maybe 20, 30 years ago, that wasn't really seen as, accountants weren't seen as that go-to sort of person. Whereas nowadays, I think the accountant has really been seen as that one person who hopefully, outside of the business becomes almost like an integral part. And that sort of links into that advisory growth that we're really seeing with so many accountants that we deal with.
I think there's so many bits that you can unpack in here, but I think the first one to have a look at is really, talking about this change in the way that people need to be perceived and being able to do that on your own, I think this is the tough thing. And accountants are not different to other businesses in they want to get on with what they love doing. So now there's this extra element of how they actually put themselves out there, and having that content involves either bringing someone in to do that content and a whole lot of issues to manage that, or looking at ways you can partner with someone that's going to deliver that.
Yeah, and with all the accountants that we speak to, especially in the early days when they're just maybe on that journey towards understanding they need to be doing something more than they have been doing, and they come and speak to us. So BOMA as a sort of concept tries to marry the technology with the expert content together, so that a small firm, and most of our firms are sort of under 30 FTEs, maybe with one person, and that person might be the partner, or equally might be the practice manager or a sectionist, can actually go in and say, right, I can actually create a process and a system that's repeatable, and I can start to deliver that value out to my clients, maybe to my prospects or leads. And I think, Talila, with your partnerships system, I mean, that's very much what you've seen as well, is that it's all very well to have the idea of a process, but you actually need that process documented and in place, and ideally with a sort of a structure or a technology to make it easier. Otherwise, it's, you don't want to be living in the world of 100 different Google Sheets and sort of Word docs trying to keep track of everything.
Yeah, I think, Talila, it's an interesting one that Charles raises there, because certainly going back to an earlier point as well that he mentioned around partnerships, being the key to unlocking this whole idea that it used to be just about referrals and picking up things really easily. There's a lot different expectations on all sorts of businesses, and accountants are no different. So partnerships is a different way of thinking and approaching and unlocking some of that potential.
Yeah, I think it does go back to exactly the two things that Charles said, Anthony, and we know this from the Connected Accountant podcast. Accountants now want to be the trusted advisor, and they're expected to be that. More and more pressure on them to be more than just doing your tax, more and more opportunity for them to become proactive, and indeed with all the AI pressure as well, more and more need for them to do that. And systems are the core of everything. Like Charles said, it's all very good to do something in drips and drabs, but there's nothing consistent about it. And accountants do naturally build partnerships. They do it anyway because they need a lawyer, or they need a, financial planner, or they need something for their clients. So they will do that, but they don't have a system or a structure. So it becomes just incredibly ad hoc. They know that various people that they have send them referrals, and it's probably their number one channel, but they have no control over it, or minimal control. And they mistake networking for partnerships or lots of chats.
What strikes me with accountants is that traditionally what happens with accountants is they study at university, they leave university and generally go and work in some of the larger firms. And larger firms are used to this whole idea that they bring everything under one umbrella. And that's fine if you're a massive international firm. You might be able to do that. You might have a collection of expertise. You might even have some marketing and content people in there. But even then, that might be debatable. But I think the hard part is they then leave that, go out on their own, and they've carried that same expectation that they have to do it all under one umbrella. And it's changing a mental side of things, isn't it, Talila? I mean, it's not, this whole idea of unlocking the partnership concept isn't foreign, but is foreign all at the same time.
Very, very true. Very, very true. I think too, what you said is every time I sit down with an accountant for the first time, one of the things they say to me, and I will paraphrase here, is I am the worst marketer in the world. They all believe that. They don't think they have any flair. They don't want to do it. I'm sure there are exceptions to whom I apologize, but many accountants would agree with that, saying, I don't want to market and I don't want to sell. I want to get on and do what? And this enables them to do that whilst having the benefits that they need for their clients.
Yeah, I mean, Charles, that's an interesting point. We both share a marketing background very much. In fact, we all do. And so the question is that I always find that that's a really interesting statement. People say, oh, I don't do any marketing. And I say, well, are you actually talking to anybody, whether it's existing clients or potential clients? You ever meeting anyone anywhere? Because you're doing marketing. It's just a question of how well you're doing it and whether you're doing it in order to be able to stand out. And because of changing expectations that happen in the market, because not just accountants are being impacted by this, everybody's being impacted by this in business, an expectation that you're going to deliver more than just your core product or service. It's something that we really have to make accountants understand, particularly that they need to change the way they think.
Yeah, and I think everyone in the entire services, in terms of professional services industry, has had a real jolt in the last couple of years with the rise of AI, and so many things that could require a person to do now can be done in just a few minutes with AI. And so really what accountants need to be thinking about, and I'm obviously preaching to the converted, I'm sure, to many, is that actually what are the services that you can offer which can't be done but in 2 minutes by anyone with an AI? Like, what are your clients, what are they going to be coming to you for? And to the point that I think you, Talila, made about accountants, sort of coming, especially from a big firm, or sort of accountants have a particular mindset that we found, which is they're perfectionists. And they need to be, because obviously you're dealing with numbers and tax, and it's, and the government. And the funny thing is that actually, when it comes to marketing, that can get in the way of, perfection can get in the way of action. And one of the key things we often hear is, well, I was going to write, a social post, or I was going to write something about that, but I just couldn't get it perfect. It wasn't just quite right. And as a result, I didn't write it. Now, the key thing here to remember is that although obviously you want everything to be perfect, the more important thing in some ways, at least from a marketing communications perspective, is you want to be showcasing that value. You want to be telling your clients what's going on and what's important. So I suppose that's where, something like BOMA comes in, which is, the content is there, whatever update has sort of come out in Australia, New Zealand, and the UK, which are our core markets. Within a day, 24 hours, we've got content referring to that piece of legislation or the budget or a change in policy. Now, the key thing here, obviously, is that no two accountants are alike. The services they provide might be very similar, but what makes it really special is the personal one-to-one connection and the way that it's delivered. So, the key thing with any form of marketing, but especially with, taking content, say, from something like BOMA, is that you can customize it. So you will have your own perspective, your own point of view. You can customize it for a specific segment of your client base. And that's really the key thing, is to show that you understand what is impacting them, and you have a perspective on what what can be done about it and how maybe you can help them. So yeah, it's a tricky one, but I think there is a little bit of fear. But hopefully we're here to help you get over that, maybe that fear of not being perfect, because marketing, as I'm sure you'll all see on a lot of social channels, the idea of having a big budget campaign costing millions of dollars, that's all out, and it's all about authenticity. So being authentically you and your firm is really key. And so you don't need to worry that, if you're shooting something on your mobile phone, that's fine. Or if you're doing something like we're doing now off your webcam, that's absolutely fine. The key is to get that information, to showcase that value, and hopefully at the end of it, to have that call to action, which says, like, we can help. Like, if you're in trouble here, or if you need assistance or advice, come and chat to us and we'll work with you.
I love what you've produced, because I think that the ability to tailor it and give it that authentic touch is really important, because whilst the bulk of the content is there and it's something that you've produced using journalists and trusted experts, but to put people's spin on it and getting back to those authentic stories makes a difference, because that's what separates one firm from the next, right? Isn't it? It's that individual take, and putting their own spin and values on it, and knowing who their clients are as part of the process.
Yeah, I think And the great thing there is that nothing will more quickly differentiate you from someone else than putting your own perspective on it and telling your own stories. And that might be stories of how you as a firm engage in a community. That might be stories about how you have helped other businesses, which might be similar to a client's business, how you've helped them. So, ideally, and this actually links into partnerships, if you can have a story, which is a story not necessarily about you, but about how one of your clients was helped by you, and they're telling that story on your behalf. That in a way is a little bit of a partnership, but it links to the idea of, if you have a partnership, as Talila said, with one of your frequent colleagues, might be a lawyer, might be a business association, and you were brought along as someone to tell a story. There's already that trust, that level of trust is already engendered because, in the testimonial example, they see that this is a real business, they've used you, they've had a great result, and they're willing to tell their story. In the partnership's perspective, they know that, you've been brought along to speak at an event. And so all that person's clients are like, oh goodness, I'm meeting this accountant. He or she is trusted enough to come along and speak as an expert. And that puts you miles above just going on to, say, Google and having a look and sort of seeing what appeals. Even though you might see reviews on there, sort of that one-to-one connection is, and sort of that one-to-one personal introduction, I think is super powerful.
Talila, I'm going to bring you in here because I think this is a perfect opportunity to do two things. One, to talk about how this partnership is formed between the two of you, but also in the context of that, to say that there is a result here and that you are doing exactly what Charles has just been talking about, that they got an event that's coming up that's actually going to be talking about partnerships. But the point is that there's a story here of how you formed the partnership, and there's a story here of how the outcome of what that's going to be.
Correct. Yes. So I actually was a guest on a podcast a webinar that Charles did with the Backroom when they talked about partnerships as one of the avenues of marketing. And after that, Charles and myself sat down and talked partnerships for ourselves. And we are producing a webinar which will engage and really help accountants in this area, because one of the strongest levers that accountants could pull when it comes to, as Charles said, elevating their own status and telling their story and their credibility and creating the unique one-to-one connection that's authentic, is combining their capabilities with that of other experts that they know, like, and trust, and putting out a shared message. So if you are a client, say, of an accountant and you want to sell your business, having an accountant that's an expert in selling the business along with the person who values it and the person who sells it, for example, giving it together, gives you as the listener a complete story of what to do, and obviously also builds trust between you and the parties that you're listening to. And from the point of view of the accountant who runs such an event, it firstly opens up avenues to audiences of the other parties that they've brought in. It creates that credibility and that elevation of status, because you're basically working alongside trusted experts, and they can see the quality and the expertise in the brain's trust that they're learning from as a client. As well as that, you've got an educational asset that you can put out on your social media, you can use again, you can send to your client base. I think one of the things that's worth knowing is that as accountants are transitioning, a lot of them from more reactive or, compliance work to proactive work, they actually have a lot of clients that won't even know what they necessarily do in these other areas. So many birds can be killed with the one stone of partnerships and marketing put together, partnership marketing.
And I think it's important at this point to also make people appreciate that partnerships, particularly I know for accountants, can often feel like they're very onerous and that it's a partner in the firm. This is way broader definition of that. In this particular case, it's more of a marketing partnership, which is less formal in that in that kind of comparison, I guess. And I think that's something that needs to be outlined to people to appreciate that, because this applies beyond accountants, of course. This is the same rule applies to any business, that it's not just about, right, I'm going to give you business, you're going to give me business.
It's not just about that at all. It's one of the benefits for sure. And you wouldn't do it unless you trusted the other person, because clients are the most valuable thing to you and your reputation. So if you do send business to someone, that's already a high one. And if they send it to you, that is the basis for doing great stuff through marketing partnership. And we are talking obviously about referral partners and networks, and shall we say strategic partners, what people call strategic partners, joint ventures. There's so many words for these, but basically the alliance of complementary businesses to add more to their clients by working together.
I think, Charles, what I like about the system that you've got is that you've recognized from the outset that it's not just about here's some content, go and deal with it. It is, first of all, a very interactive platform, as you said, because you can put your own spin on it. But you see yourself very much as a partnership with the individual accountants, rather than just here is something, go and use it.
Yeah, and I think the basis of what we try to do, and this actually is probably very similar to what we're advising accountants to do, is to, we try and educate our accountants on, opportunities for marketing. If it was just as simple as send an email and do a social post, and that's all you need to do, life would be simple, but it's not the case. There are so many facets to, good communication and good marketing. And, there's a lot of ins and outs. So we spend a lot of time writing blogs and doing webinars, as Talila said, with, either experts within BOMA or with our own partners that we bring in to basically try and showcase all the variety of opportunities out there. And the nice thing is that the way that partnerships marketing, a lot of the way it works in terms of, getting the content out or hosting a webinar or sort of inviting people to an event, the basis of it is all, you need a platform like BOMA to make that happen. But then you also need a bit of a plan sort of in the background. And what I've definitely learned, having come from a big agency background where you might be working for a big corporate bank, and you might be like, right, here's the plan. It's going to be 50 pages long. And that's fine when you've got an agency of 100 people and sort of 50 people inside the marketing team working on it. But when you're working with a small business, having a plan, definitely it should include, there's some real basics in there in terms of, newsletters, emails, segmentation, activity on social media to drive awareness and sort of interest level when people look at you, and obviously some SEO for your website, as well as AEO, which is the new form of artificial intelligence and how they read your website. But a big part of that should also be partnerships marketing, because one thing I thought was interesting, just to drop a stat in there, is the Association of Marketing did a study. Well, they do it every year, but they did one on prof services last year, and it found that accounting firms are only roughly spending about 1% of revenue on their marketing. And this is versus around about a 7 to a 10% benchmark for the rest of professional services. So, law firms anywhere up to 10%, consulting around 6%. But it found that firms that double their spend grow up to 7 times faster than those who don't. But here's the rub. Not everyone is going to be able to say, great, we're just going to double our spend. It's not that easy. The nice thing with partnerships is that it's really the cheapest way that you can activate and enlarge your reach and reach a whole section of clients and prospects that you wouldn't have been able to do before. And because it's, it's a quid pro quo in terms of like you're both getting value from it, as Talila said, ideally, there will be, it will be profitable for both of you. It doesn't actually need to cost anything. So if you're thinking about, how do I actually double my activity, double my reach without spending more and without having to do an enormous amount of work, and Talila can speak to how, one can utilize, the other person's expertise and assets, then partnership marketing is just such a no-brainer in a way, because it's something that you can stand up and make happen with, probably as you pointed out, Talila, I'm sure if everyone sort of thought and noted down, potential partners, you'd probably think of 10 very, very quickly that you could say, okay, here's 10 potentials of which 2 would be definites, and you could actually start that relationship with them pretty quickly.
So spot on. And I think too, it allows you to take those partnerships to a deeper level. So one of the things that you see is that you can take the goodwill and the trust and the expertise that exists between two aligned businesses and turn it into something proactive through marketing partnerships. It has to be a triple win, right? A win for the clients who are our audience, a win for both. So it really is a triple win. Nobody loses, like, many forms of marketing where you could lose a lot of money, time, and effort trying to figure out how to do it. This is a kind of an immediate start, and you've both partners have audiences. The audiences have the need for this information. Plugging straight into an existing client source with existing knowledge and combining them for the 1 + 1 makes 3 result. One of the things we do is, when we build embedded partnerships, we go through a process where we're taking people that know each other and making it less informal and more conscious, more proactive. Where can I slot you into what I do? Where can you slot me into what you do? How can we maximally help our clients? One key part of that for us is the marketing partnership, because it's something that both parties can immediately take action on. And as well as the immediate benefits, as I said, there's an asset that they can then use to introduce each other. So, for example, I think Anthony, Sean Steele, he sent a client his podcast with me on it at one point, and that led to a very rapid conversion. The client said, I already know who you are and listen to the podcast. So that podcast can be a touch point that creates trust for a referral, for example. There are many uses and reuses for these assets. So as Charles said, it's the results are immediate. They don't cost anything, but they're also long-lasting, and they deepen the relationships between partners and the strength and the trust and understanding between them as well.
And Charles, tell us about some of the success stories, because you've been at this for a little while. What have you seen in the transformation of some of the firms that have utilized the services that you've got?
Yeah, I think the key thing for us is that oftentimes, as Talila said, we've often had people who either come from a big firm background and suddenly, going from a big support team, either maybe to one that doesn't have any, or they're out there launching their own firm. And suddenly they realize they have to do it all themselves while still doing everything. And growth for a retailer means I have sold more units of a particular thing. I've got more customers. What we actually began to understand is that for most accountants, unless they were at that very new stage of building their firm, is that growth for most of them either came from getting rid of the wrong sorts of clients and getting more of the right sorts of clients, or it came from upselling their current existing clients. And so they would sort of say, great, I've been able to tell my clients that we do these 5 things that they didn't know about, these services. I've actually been able to grow my revenue by 150% because I got existing clients to buy into them. Now, the other side of things is obviously preventing churn. And I know that some smaller firms, might only keep, 60 to 70% of their clients versus sort of top performers from the studies I've seen is sort of more at 90%. If you're keeping more of your ideal clients and you're upselling them, you don't necessarily need to go and find any new clients, because the ARPU per your current client has doubled or tripled. And that's really the value that we've seen is like, yes, getting new clients is great, but it's about using the clients that you do have and taking them up that value chain to higher value services, which obviously, as we were sort of saying before, in the rise of compliance or compliance software and AI and outsourcing, that's really where you want to be funneling them, is up to sort of that higher value services. So that for us is the exciting part, and was a real learning for us, is that actually, more of the ideal clients, taking more services and sort of lower churn rates, and that for our sort of best performing customers is really where they've seen the value.
Yeah, I mean, Talila, tell me the same sort of question for you, the value that you're seeing and the stories that you're seeing of success as a result of the partnerships that are being formed.
Yes, well, that's very exciting. I want to point out, and I'm working with quite a number of accountants at the moment because it's the niche that I'm focusing on specifically. I recently did a sales environment assessment for an accounting firm, very successful firm. And one of the things that came out absolutely was that the more touch points they had with clients, the better their conversion into the more proactive elements. And those that were only on our annual kind of reviews, a lot of times when they did make recommendations, they fell on deaf ears because there wasn't a relationship built or trust or education provided. And so this is the part that I feel is so valuable that BOMA does. In terms of what we've got going on right now, we've got, as you know, an accounting and an advisory partner suitcase going on. So we have accountants in there, as well as all the sort of financial planners, financial coaches, wealth managers, etc. They are now, one of them has just, I think you might have seen it, in a private WhatsApp group, just created a program with someone else, which is running. Another one has just sent me a text message last week saying he's got 2 very excited partners who are promoting what he's doing. We have another one that actually came off the webinar that I did with Charles recently, from a client of BOMA, and he's really using it to niche right now and change the whole way that he's going to deliver. It's not just even related just to marketing. It also shapes the firm's direction a little bit in terms of how you're going to express the value of your message. And there are so many little stories and big stories coming out. I have to be careful, of course, what I say because I don't want to mention names without permission. However, I can say that even our client, the back room, as you know, they had a really big change when they started focusing on marketing partnership. And they saved a lot of money advertising because they have a worldwide solution, and they also started seeing higher deal values and many more leads. So we've gone through that in the connected accountant, of course. I think the biggest value to accountants is that they realize that they're actually quite good at marketing. When they do it, they start from, I don't know what to do and I can't do it, to, I'm actually a really smart individual and I can use the same capability to be strategic about how I present myself to my clients.
There's so much we can share here, but just only time for a couple more questions. And one of them I just wanted to ask both of you, and I'll start with you, Talila, is really around thought leadership and the positioning as a thought leader. Because to me, I think a lot of people feel as though that is something they have to do, or they feel like they're not capable of being a thought leader. But, you know, the partnerships that can be formed enable you to position yourself as a thought leader, perhaps without you even realizing it.
Exactly. I mean, the thought leader could be anything these days, and it's one of those bandied around terms. But really, if what you want is for your niche to recognize that you know what you're talking about in this space and that they should come and work with you, then I can't think of a better way, Anthony, than to find other excellent professionals that you're already working alongside and get them to say for you, this person is great, and to share. They've already got experiences of working with you if you've been working as referral partners. So the trust is there and trust is transferred. Trust is transferred. Have to say that 3 times. If an audience already trusts your partner, then your partner introducing you will mean they trust you as well. It's the way it works. And it's why marketing partnerships are so powerful.
I was going to say, it's not the trust isn't the marketing version of Beetlejuice, is it? You have to say it 3 times to get there.
I think sometimes these messages that are so profound can be missed. And the biggest difference between going out and marketing on Google or any other way and through marketing partnership is the trust. People are less and less inclined to believe strangers. And I think there was a small business report that you mentioned recently, Charles, and I reread it, and it was like 69% of small businesses in Australia choose their accountant through word of mouth or referral. And that means that 7 out of 10 of your clients are coming from not something you did but through paid advertising, but through knowing who you are, through whether your clients referred you because they said, oh, my accountant is really good, or through partners referred you. And that comes from marketing and marketing partnership. That's why it is necessary.
Yeah, I was going to say, Charles, a similar sort of question to you. I mean, being positioned as a thought leader also means that you're producing information on a regular basis and educating your audience so that you've got on top of what might be articles that you're producing, so therefore standard to a degree that other accountants could be offering it, but it's your unique insights on top of that which hold the huge amount of value, isn't it? I mean, that's where you're trying to position people.
Yeah, I think one thing to remember is that, there are many influencers in the accounting industry that's almost their sort of their full-time job is to sort of to be there. And, we have to remember that for the average business owner out there, the value that an accountant can deliver them is massive. And so don't ever forget that actually you've got so many things that you can talk about. They're going to be hugely valuable for the small business owner as they toiling away, and often quite a sort of a small group. Maybe they're speaking to their husband or their wife, or maybe one or two friends, but there's not many support networks out there other than maybe, other than if they sort of belong to a little mentor group. So never underestimate the value that you have just in your everyday knowledge about what is going on out there. The great thing with technology is that it has democratized our access to all of these channels. So, you can pick up your phone and you can record something and you can put it on social media, on YouTube. You can put it out to LinkedIn, even to maybe like if you belong to a small business group, and you can, it doesn't have to be long, it doesn't have to be polished. You can be delivering value. So the value that you deliver can be anything from a small insight to a white paper that you want to spend 3 or 4 weeks creating. Then the key is really consistency, because there was an old adage in marketing, which is anywhere from 7 to 10 touch points, which you alluded to earlier, to sort of get someone to come and take notice of you. And the same goes for a prospective client. And referrals are still really key. But people do their research now. They will go look at your website. They will look and see if you have a blog or sort of insight section. They will go and check out your LinkedIn profiles, your social media pages. And again, those are all key touch points where you can be providing value. The nice thing there is that, it's to your current followers, but also to prospective followers. And oftentimes it's a low risk way for people to start engaging with you. They can follow you. They don't have to connect with you. They can just follow you and say, okay, do these people know what they're talking about? Or I've seen, someone shared something on social media. I really like that insight. I'm going to follow them. And over time, without you being even aware of it, this content marketing, this educational marketing that you're doing is positioning you in these followers' minds as the expert, as someone worth going to speak to. Now, obviously, if you're referred to, even better. If they look on your website and they see great reviews, Google reviews, for example, that's fantastic. But don't underestimate the impact that all these small touch points will have.
Another audience is prospective partners, because they will also look at you for, particularly when you're acquiring partners, investors. Couldn't agree more.
Which is a good segue, Talila. Just before I ask my final question to both of you, give us a bit of detail about the webinar that's coming up so that people can know what to do. And of course, we are going to include details in the show notes.
Yes. So I'll give my spin and Charles can give his. But from my view, it's all about, we've talked about the why. Why should accountants focus on marketing and on marketing partnerships and partnerships, where they overlap and what you can do with them in real time, so that you make the most of your current audience and your partner's audience and elevate your credibility and all that. And that's all the why. Now let's talk about the how. So this webinar will really focus on the steps, making it as simple as possible to take the network you already have, all of the experience you already have, and the assets within BOMA, and go ahead and run one of these marketing partnerships and see for yourself, experience the magic. So that's what the webinar will be all about. And it's coming up on the 7th of July at 12 o'clock, 12 noon Australia and 2 p.m. New Zealand.
Fantastic. Charles, anything to add to that part?
Look, that was fantastic, Talila. I don't want to take up too much more time other than to say it will be both a bit of theory and a little bit of how to and practice. So we'll actually take you through how you could actually utilize a platform. In this case, we'll show you BOMA, but to actually send out some marketing communications, how that would then link back and create them as new leads, and how you would then follow up with segmented emails. So really, taking the idea of in practice, how would a partnership event style campaign work, and what the sort of outcomes would be. And then from Talila's perspective, maybe the ROI that you might expect from this, because that's obviously the key. We're not saying that, one doesn't do marketing for the fun of it. There is a purpose behind it, a business case to be made, and as everything, it needs to return, the time and resource that you spend, it needs to come back with obviously increased revenue for your business.
Fortunately, when it comes to accountants, one client can be, recurring revenue for 5-10 years at quite a high rate. Getting a few of them is very good ROI.
Absolutely. So again, we'll put some details in the show notes for people to get in touch. And of course, if you are watching or listening to this and it's past that date, don't worry, register as well, because I think there'll be a recording or some way to access it in the future. So pay attention to that. But just lastly, to wrap things up, this is a question I like to ask all my guests on the program. What's the aha moment that businesses have when they come to work with you that you wish more people knew they were going to have in advance? So, Talila, let's start with you.
The aha moment is that it's all about buyer psychology, and you don't sell to, you sell through. And that goes for both the way you sell to client acquisition and partnerships. And if you can just stick to those two things, client acquisition becomes relatively easy and very systematic.
Lovely. What about you, Charles?
Really, it's about they didn't know it could be as simple as it actually could be, with the content and the platform all integrated. And so they're sort of having approached or having thought about marketing as a big, scary, sort of unmanageable beast. They're like, oh, actually, it is manageable with the process and the content and the distribution in place. I can actually be marketing like a much bigger firm, but it's not going to take, unreasonable resources, time from my firm. And so I can obviously deliver those services to the client, which is obviously, what they want to focus on in the first place.
Fantastic. Thank you both for so much incredible information and insights, not just for accountants. And I hope the people that have been listening in recognize that, because this really does fall across all measures of businesses. There's lots of things to learn from this. And I appreciate both of you being part of the program.
Thank you so much, Anthony. It was a great pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Anthony. And great to hopefully we delivered some great insights for everyone to think about.
Thank you both. And of course, everyone, don't forget to pay attention to the show notes for all the information, how to get in contact with both Talila and Charles, and of course, the webinar as well. And we remind you, of course, to don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, because we welcome those comments. And we look forward to your company next time on Biz Bites for Thought Leaders. Hey, thanks for listening to Biz Bites. We hope you enjoyed the program. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Biz Bites is proudly brought to you by Podcasts Done For You, the service where we will deliver a podcast for you and expose your brilliance to the world. Contact us today for more information. Details in the show notes. We look forward to your company next time on Biz Bites.